What's up, gamer girls? It's me on Hypixel Skyblock talking about the new pets that came out in the Glacite Tunnels here. We have a couple new pets on the alpha that have finally gotten added, and I've kind of been waiting to make any alpha content until we had something to actually talk about, and these pets are definitely something to talk about. So in this video, I wanted to kind of talk about the two specifically combat-based pets and compare them to some of the more meta modern combat things, because these pets definitely look like they might have a place in the meta. Both the pets that I'm talking about are purely based on dinosaurs. So the first pet we're looking at is the Ankylosaurus. This one, I'm going to struggle to say his name every single time I mention it, but he's going to give health, defense, and true defense. The attack speed there is just me throwing a tiger plushie on this pet, but I got him at level 100 here, and the perks here are very, very interesting because all of them seem like they could be pretty darn good. So Armored Tank is the first one, and this is where you're going to gain a percentage of your defense as strength, and that perk is absolutely insane, especially inside of dungeons. If we go and just look at the Berserk class for a second here, you can see that you have a perk called Indomitable. Gain percentage of your strength as defense. So you're getting that perk. I don't know which one of these procs first, actually, but either way, you're getting some of your strength as defense, and then you're getting some of your defense as strength when you use an Ankylosaurus, which means that you're actually able to get a very, very high strength number. Dungeons is kind of not working on the alpha. You can see on the side there, I'll just open again. You can see that I have been in a queue for 8 minutes because I believe the Ankylosaurus is crashing dungeons on the alpha currently, but I'm sure that'll be fixed. Either way, the perk on this was able to get me a very, very close strength number to my Dwarf Turtle Shelmet Golden Dragon. So it's not comparative to a, Antique Remedies G-Dragon. It still is less strength, but this is on a pet that is based on health and defense as its main stats. So still very, very good perk, this Armored Tank. This next perk, Unyielding, I'm sure is going to be useful for the absolute sweats in the game because this is going to increase the effectiveness of the ultimate enchant Last Stand and the attribute Lifeline. And that is absolutely insane to hear for someone who is doing like Kudra, because Lifeline is a very, very meta attribute. It means that whenever you're at low health, you're going to be dealing more damage, and increasing the effectiveness of that by 50 might mean that this pet could become the Kudra meta. I haven't had the option to test this because I do not have a Lifeline setup. I don't have that kind of coin, but I'm sure someone could explain and test this out once it's out on the main server if this is actually going to be really good. And then Last Stand being more effective just means you're going to be able to get more defense, which means that you would get more towards this Armored Tank. So that perk synergizes very well with the first perk, and as I said, Lifeline is very meta in certain encounters across the game. Mainly you're looking at Kudra, but there are people who use it outside of Kudra, even in M7 or on some Slayer bosses, so this pet could be very good along those lines just off of having Lifeline get buffed. Last perk that we're looking at is Clubbed Tail. Every 5th hit deals 50% of your final damage to enemies within 5 blocks, and then enemies hit deal 10 less damage for 10 seconds. I'm not sure if that is meant to say 10% or just 10 damage. I'm kind of confused at the bottom portion, but the 50% of your final damage to enemies within 5 blocks is basically like a better version of Cleave. And this 5th hit is going to be the 5th hit in general, not just consecutive hits on one mob. So that means that you're going to get this proccing very often and be able to get some half-decent AoE on this, because 50% of your final damage means that it's just 50% of your damage. A lot of the time, these perks will say that it's going to deal the same amount of damage or whatever, and it does some weird math about it. This one is using the number you see and giving you 50% of that on the hit. So the Ankylosaurus is dealing a bunch of AoE. The other combat pet that got added is the T-Rex. The first perk, Close Combat, because you got those small arms going, is that you're going to deal 100% more damage to enemies within 1.5 blocks. So you do got to be close. This is the opposite of how Giraffe is working, but you are going to deal 100% bonus damage. Obviously, that's worse than something like a Golden Dragon's going to give you, but Golden Dragon's Golden Dragon, and this is from mining. So that's going to be the first perk. The next perk, you're going to have a 10% chance to stun enemies whenever you hit them. So the stun right there is going to look like that. It's just going to be them spinning around for a second. And, you know, it's not a fantastic perk by any means. A lot of people would rather just kill a guy than stun them. But just having the opportunity to stun enemies is going to be nice for things like dungeon mini bosses. Also, this stun does proc on arrows here. I got an artisanal short bow out so I could actually test it, but you can see you're able to proc it with arrows, meaning that this is going to be generally useful as a more survivability pet. It can free up that slot that you'd be using as an ice spray wand because you'd be able to be dealing the damage and stunning from a distance rather than being up close. So it definitely is going to have its use for people who actually need it on survivability, mainly on those shadow assassins and other mini bosses inside of dungeons. The last perk is super spicy. Tyrant is going to make it so stats granted by pet items on this pet are increased by 100%. So you can see I have Antique Remedies on this pet, and it is going to an absolutely bonkers strength number. To put it into perspective, I believe that this would normally have 75 strength just based off of looking at this level 1, which means that the 195 is me gaining 120 strength from throwing on Antique Remedies, which is absolutely nuts. So the stats are good on this pet, the damage is good, and the survivability is going to be something that's super helpful for those who are just trying to combat the dungeon enemies that are all around. Before we look at the damage numbers, I want to remind you that the Clubbed Tail perk and the stun perk here on this, the Ferocious Roar, are both proccable via bows. So this is going to make this a bit more useful because bows are able to get hits on a lot of guys very quickly, meaning that you're going to have a decent amount of chance of stunning or dealing that cleave damage from the Clubbed Tail perk. Both of those are going to be proccing super often whenever you're inside of dungeons. As I said, can't test dungeons still, 38-minute queue at this point. We're never getting in, but literally these pets have a great survivability aspect to them, and they're going to be dealing some damage. So first, let's just look at some current damage pets. Ender Dragon dealing about 1.3 whenever I'm hitting, 1.2 to 1.3, somewhere in that range. Golden Dragon, 1.49. So now getting on to the newer pets here, the Ankylosaurus, definitely going to deal the lowest damage here at just under 1 million, but that is still 30% around the range of an Ender Dragon while giving you insane defensive stats and that AoE of the Clubbed Tail hit. And then the T-Rex from a range is going to deal 1.05, so lower than both the other pets by a decent margin. But if you get in that 1.5 block range, it is going to be able to deal a lot more at 1.2. But as you could see right there, when I was trying to get in that range, it's very close that it wants you to get there. It is absurdly close from my point of view, where right there is not within 1.5 blocks. 1.5 blocks is an absolutely tiny amount of range. Like right there is going to be inside of it, but like something like right here, not going to be 1.5 blocks away. So how often are you really fighting people where you're going to be dealing that 200,000 more damage? I'm not really sure, but if you are able to get in that range, and if you do go up close, you are going to deal a bunch of damage. One benefit here is that you do have that stun perk, so you have the opportunity to go up close because you're going to have the chance at stunning them. If you use something like the Soul Weaver gloves as well, this is going to mean that you're able to run right up in something's face and deal that maximum damage, and this pet is basically equivalent to an Ender Dragon at that point. I mean, seriously, what was it? It was 1.22 versus 1.31. So you're dealing about 10% less damage, less than 10% less, and it is going to be a much cheaper pet than the Ender Dragon is. I'm very confident in the fact that the T-Rex will not be as expensive as the Ender Dragon, at least once prices balance out and this update has been out for a while. Once Dungeons is re-enabled, I'll make a whole video talking about just full tank Ankylosaurus gaming, because I'm sure there's a lot of fun things you can do in that end where you're just running insane defense and still dealing decent damage. But as of right now, the T-Rex pet is looking like it's super solid. The Ankylosaurus will also definitely have some good use, and these combat pets are definitely going to be something that you as a mid to late game player might want to look into getting, because hey, they're getting close to competing with an Ender Dragon, and you know, they're not competing with a Golden Dragon, but they shouldn't. Golden Dragon's the best pet in the game, and I just threw that in there to show you the high bar that we're trying to reach and how close these pets are actually able to get, while also providing some super good utility other than just the damage. So let me know down below what you guys think about these two pets. Let me know which other pets you want to see me go over in the brand new Glacite Tunnels update. I just felt like I should specifically test on the combat ones super in depth here to see what is great, but definitely these pets look like they could be really good. The lifeline buff's going to be insane, and the utility is off the charts here compared to something like a Golden Dragon. So that's going to be it for this video. Hope it kept you informed, and I'll talk to you in the next one. Peace out.